Hello everyone, welcome to another template design walkthrough. So this new design is called Plastered, and this is going to be great for your media day images if you're looking to kind of create this media day look without having to actually create the physical backdrop for your different schools. This is a great option for you to simplify that workflow and be able to customize this for each of your schools to create this type of look. Now, if you've used the media panels design that I have available, this is going to feel very familiar as far as customizing each of these kind of pages or panels or sheets in the background here. But let's go through here and take a look at what's in the layer stack here and give you a good idea about how to run through this. So pretty easy to do. But starting at the top, as usual, we have our color grading layers. These layers are going to add some contrast, a little bit of color, more punch to the image to give it more of that finished final look. Below that are our facial highlight boosts for lighter skin and darker skin tones. Again, if you want to brighten up the highlights on the face, I have these kind of preset. You just select the mask, paint on that with a white brush, and it's going to bring those facial highlights out. And as always, remember, all of your layer names are going to have, either the indication of what the layer is or some instructions on there. And just notice I need to fix this misspelling here, but just to show you the instructions are on here on the layer names and things. All right, so if we go on down below that, this is just a simple text group. So if you wanted to add a name to this one, just right inside this group here, is just a couple font options, very easily to customize and add that there. The link for the font that I'm using in this sample will be on the product page as usual. Below that's our subject group. This is where you're going to place your subject into. We're going to turn a subject on in just a minute and look at customizing this. But below that there's a little bit of pre-built kind of effects in here to give this more of a realistic look. So for instance, there's going to be this shadowing, which is going to be indicative of your subjects shadowing behind them. All right, so that's just pre-turned on there. There's some background gradient here to give this more of a realistic gradient from top down. These are containers where we're going to make our edits. We're going to look at that in just a second, but you'll see right here, edit these containers. So this is where we're going to make those simple changes. There's some ground shadowing down here, again, just to add a little bit of realism. Our background shadowing is more lighting adjustments to our background for that realistic effect. Now you have, these are all of the container layers back here. You'll see this says do not edit. In fact, if you expand these are all just labeled do not edit because you don't need to mess with these. All right, these are smart objects, and you shouldn't have to touch these at all. Now, if you wanted to come through and you wanted to move all of these around, absolutely feel free. That's the beauty of a layered document, is you can do what you would like. Below that is our ground shadow for this kind of contact shadow down here. So I've set this up in a couple of ways. The first is this reflection type of the floor in here. So again, that contact ground shadow here helps make that feel more realistic. And then this is actually the reflections here. You can see background container reflections. You don't have to edit these either. They will automatically update. But that's what's going to create that reflected surface in the floor. And then there's some ground options here. So there's this concrete, there's a gym floor. Actually, if you turn these off, I really love the look of this white, just a really glossy floor here. There's a dirt option, which you would want to turn those reflections off for, and also a turf one that you'd want those reflections off for. All right, so I'm just going to turn the concrete back on. That's one of my favorite ones. So now, if you wanted this to be like a full length here, all you'd really have to do is turn your reflections off and turn that ground shadow off. And then the last thing would be to disable this mask right here on the background containers. And you could also get rid of that ground shadowing. All right, so a few layers are going to turn off is going to give you this full layout here. So if you wanted to do, just like a 3/4 with no feet, that would be how you would do that. All right, and so then if you want the feet back, we'd turn our ground shadow back on here and here, re-enable this mask, and then turn your reflection on if needed. All right, so you can do both looks by just easily making those tweaks right there. All right, so let's go up here. So that's the base layers. You're going to see here's our containers. This is where we're going to make the changes to the smart objects. These do not need to be turned on. All right, so these can be disabled and we can still make our changes. But let's turn our subject on first. So here we got our subject layer. Boom, so we got our subject on. Now let's do a couple things with the subject before we get into customizing the background. I just want to kind of show you my simple approach for creating some ground shadows and reflections. All right, so it's a bit of a manual process, but if you're looking to do full length and really want to create that overall effect, this is how I go about that. So the first thing that I do is come behind the subject and add a blank layer. I'm going to zoom into the feet here. I'm going to grab a black brush and I'm going to turn the flow down, around 20 to 30%. And I'm just going to paint in first this little contact shadow right under the foot like so. All right, so a few brush strokes right there. We'll do one more over here. All right, just like that. I'm going to round this one out just a bit more. There we go. So a little contact shadow there to make it feel like the feet are actually on the ground. Then we'll do another blank layer. This time I'm going to turn the flow down a little bit more. And this one I'm going to go a little bit bigger, and I'm just going to kind of brush under the entire subject like this. But with this one, what I want to do is zoom out here, and I want to go to filter and blur, and I'm going to put some motion blur on this, and I'm going to make sure my angle's at 0, so it's blurring horizontally. And then I'm just going to turn this up a little bit, and you're going to see that this shadow is going to start to kind of blur out to the sides there a little, just so it softens up. And it's just the idea of making it feel like there's this overall kind of shadowing under the subject. And let's turn opacity down just a little bit. There we go. All right, so just an indication of some overall shadowing. Very simple to do there. All right, the next thing that I would like to do is I'm going to come up to the subject layer, add a blank layer, and this time I'm going to hold Alt or Option and click between these. So I'm going to clip this layer to the subject. So this is going to allow me to take a black brush now and just hit the bottom of the shoes like this. So make it feel like these shoes are kind of shadowed down at the ground. All right, so it's going to help make that contact feel a little bit more real. Now the final thing is we want to add a reflection in here. All right, so if your subject is standing straight to the camera, everything's straight on, the reflection is much simpler, but I wanted to do an angled subject to show you how you can fake this reflection as well. All right, so it's a little bit more involved, but I think this is the one most people struggle with. So what I'm going to do is take the subject layer, I'm going to hold Alt or Option, I'm going to drag down here below my shadows to make a copy. And then from that copy, I'm going to transform, Command or Control T, I'm going to flip it vertically, and then I'm just going to line the lowest foot up first, kind of like this. All right, so let's go ahead and click Apply. And so with your Move tool, you can kind of move the foot around up and down here a little bit. I'm actually going to leave it kind of like this. I know there's a little bit of a gap back here. That's okay. I'm not too worried about that. And so what I want to do is make another copy of this. So you could do Command or Control J. I'm just holding Alt or Option, dragging down. So I've got 2 copies of this, all right? So let's disable this one. On the first copy, I'm going to add a mask, and I'm going to go ahead and erase. Let's get our flow back up to 100, our brush up to black. I'm going to erase this piece of that other foot that I can see there. Now I'm going to turn this second one on, and with my Move tool, I'm just going to arrow up until this other foot's kind of up in where we want it to be. Then I'm going to add a mask to that layer, black brush, I'm going to erase that other foot that we don't need. And you can see I've kind of left the foot there. If I erase it, it gets rid of it. I'm going to hit back. I'm just going to leave that black in there to fill that space under that heel a little bit. Remember, we're just faking this so that it feels kind of real. It doesn't have to be 100% realistic. Then I'm going to grab both of these layers and merge them together. So now that I have these merged, I'm going to come up here, Filter. We're going to do another blur and motion blur. This time I'm going to make sure my angle is set to 90 degrees so it's blurring vertically. And I'm going to bring that blur down so it feels a little bit more what we want it to be, all right? So just enough so that all that starts to blur out a little bit. You don't want just a complete hard reflection there necessarily. I find it looks more real if we just get a little bit of blur to where those details really start to blur out. All right, click OK. And then there's a couple more things that's just going to help this out a little bit more. One, we're going to put a mask on here. I'm going to come over to my gradient tool, just set to black and white with a straight gradient. And I'm going to blur this, or I'm going to gradient this up a little bit, I should say. So let's pull this down and let's get a little bit of a gradient going here. All right, pull that up, pull this down. All right, so you're going to see, straighten this out some, how that starts to fade away as that kind of goes down. It's kind of like what a realistic reflection would do, kind of from your viewing perspective. It kind of fades out to nothing. All right, so that's going to help a little bit. And the last thing is just to drop the opacity just a little bit. All right, so we're just giving an indication of shadows from the feet right there. And you could always adjust that, you know, blur a little bit if you wanted to. There we go. All right, so there's our reflection and our shadowing. All right, so the idea here is just, it's kind of faked enough that it actually looks, you know, pretty decent. I might just move it up a little bit, just like that. All right, so it's just going to be the idea that it's there, and if you just pay attention to those couple little things, it's going to feel realistic without having to, you know, really examine it too much. All right, so that's my technique for creating those reflections and ground shadows, just to give that full length a little bit of realism. So hopefully you get something out of that. But let's collapse our subject, and now let's show how to customize this background. All right, so to do that, we're going to expand this containers folder, and let's just jump into the first one here. We're going to do that by double clicking on this layer thumbnail, which is going to open our smart object layer. So within this, I just have this basic set of graphics in here and text and things. Feel free to delete those out or disable them or whatever you'd like. But you're going to see, like in this container, it's got this wrinkled texture right on top here. And that's just to create a little bit of realism, and maybe this paper is not perfectly flat and smooth and all the same, you know, luminosity and everything. Feel free to turn that off or on, change the opacity. That's the beauty of layers. But what I'm going to do is go ahead and disable this graphic here for the dragon. And let's bring in our Hornet logo. All right. So I'm going to drop that down. For this one, I'm going to make this one nice and big and oversized, kind of like how we had our dragon there. So something kind of like this. All right, I'm going to click OK. I think I'm going to leave the background white. I might bring the opacity off this wrinkled texture a little bit to get more of that yellow to show through. All right, that looks pretty good. Now all I got to do is close this, say yes to save it, and you're going to see it updates any of those panels that have been placed using that smart object, all get updated at the same time. And you can even see in the reflection down here that's also getting updated at the same time. So easy as that. So then we go to the second one. So now if you wanted to throw some, you know, text in here, or just change text or whatever. So instead of Home of the Dragons, we're just going to call this one Home of the Hornets. And then we're going to change the color on this. So let's make this black. Let's make these black. And let's make Hornets more of that logo color. Now sometimes what I'll do if I'm trying to get a specific color is just drag a logo in temporarily. Let's disable this gradient. So that gives us our real color. So then I can come up to the text here, click on the color, and then just sample it straight from the text. All right, and then click OK, and then I can just delete that logo file back out. So that's one way of doing that. And then we can turn our gradient back on. Close this one, and there we go. So any of those that are using that has gotten updated. So now we go down to our third one. So this is just another, you know, logo variation here. Let's disable this one. This time I want to bring this logo in with the Fighting Hornets on there. I want to make it just slightly bigger here, like this. Let's bring this over a touch. I want to make the background, let me see, black versus, I want to see the difference here. I'm going to start with black because I think that looks kind of cool. Click OK. Let's close this, save it, yes. All right, so that's what the black looks like, but it's easy enough to pop back in. If we want to see what it looks like in white, we can just do this and close it and save, yes. I kind of like the white too. I'm going to leave it for white for now. We can always come back and change it once we decide for sure. All right, so here's the next one. Now again, any of these panels, the beauty of this is you can drop a graphic straight on top of any of these. If your school or your team has like a custom flyer, a custom graphic or something, you can simply just drop it in here, close this window, save it, done. Now these, I just have some pre-built options in here, you know, in case you need to fill things out and you want an easy way to do it. Well, it's already kind of preset. So on this one, I just have some repeating text. So for the repeating text, all you need to do is edit this top text one right here. It's top smart object, and the rest are going to update automatically. So again, we're just going to double click to pop into the smart object. This time we're going to make this say Hornets. Now one thing to keep in mind is you want to make sure this text stays within this box. So if it goes out of it a little bit, just resize your text and make sure it fits within the bounds of this box, and you'll be good to go. All right, so instead of blue, I'm going to go ahead and change this text to black to match the colors. We're going to close this, save it, yes, and you're going to see updates all this to Hornets. And now we can come through and do, let's bring that logo back again. And we're going to sample this color here to give our accent color on that one. Actually looks kind of cool with the guy in front of there. I'm going to leave it and see what it looks like, just because I think that looks kind of neat. Let's take it out. It's getting a little repetitive back there. But that's the beauty of this, of how easy this is to use. You can do these updates really quickly and just see what the whole set looks like. All right, very cool. All right, number 5. Again, this is just a preset one. Feel free to drop your own graphic or logo or whatever in here. But for this warp text, if you like the look and want to keep it, again, it's just a smart object update. So double click here. Here's our text. We'll do Hornets in here again. I can actually just leave the color on this one. Click to save it. So that changed both of those to say Hornets. All right, so let's change this to say volleyball. And then I'm going to also update this one to say the same. And then our background color, let's make that black, and let's change our stroke on here. Now one thing I should have done with this logo is just come in with my eyedropper and sample this thing. You know, and you could even copy this hex value here. Now it's going to be there whenever I need it. All right, so let's come into our stroke here. Let's change this to the yellow. Okay, and maybe even make the background that yellow. I kind of dig that. Let's close this and see what it looks like. All right, cool. That just updated all those. I dig it. Let's go to number 6. So this one, again, just a pre-built option I put in with some initials. So these are just text layers right here. So I'm going to do HH for, you know, Harrisburg Hornets, whatever your team name is. This could be whatever you want it to be. And I'm going to go ahead and apply this. And now I need to resize this to fit, so Command or Control T. Now what I like to do here personally is make sure that my lock is turned on the resizing dimensions, so that if I hold Alt or Option and resize this so it's centered, once I get it where I like it, I can just make note of what this overall resize value is. So 82.28, I think looks good. So as long as I remember that, then as I update each of these, HH, I'm just going to go ahead and update these really quick. And let's do this one. Now as I resize these, I can just come in here, 82.28, and that's going to make them all look identical. So resize this one, 82.28, And one more, resize this one. So that's just how I make sure they all look the same and keep all their alignments. All right, so from there, we can set our colors, right? So for this background color, now I can just paste that yellow in. There we go, that's gonna change those boxes. And then on the text, you know, you can just click on and off if you need to see which ones are which. Our initials didn't get updated, that's okay. Click on our color, click OK, click on our color, paste, okay. There we go, that's going to update those panels. Alright, so that gets all that updated. Now we're down to number 7. This is another logo here. On this one, let's do this. On this one, I'm going to drop in this inverted logo. Maybe. Let's try that again. There we go. Oops. There we go. Alright, so I'm going to bring this guy the size, basically I'm going to bring it the size of that box. And I think I'm going to just clip it to that block there. Yeah, I can work with that. Let's turn our wrinkled texture off. I'm going to make it a little bit smaller here so it fits. Just trying to make sure this wing on the back doesn't get cut off. And then what I'm going to do is just take my blue block, sample that yellow to match it. There we go. So it gives me that inverted. And then I'm going to turn my wrinkled texture back on. Maybe just bring the opacity off of it a touch. Close, save. There we go. And then we just got one more to do. So again, this is just a repeating text that's set up here. You can feel free to change this, you know, as you would like. But what I'm going to do is come down here and set my background color. Let's do black. This one's got a little graphic in here, just for something fun. You can turn that off or on as you'd like. But I'm going to come up to our repeating text, and we're going to change this to Fighting Hornet. Looks like everything still fits within the box there, so I'm going to change my color. Let's do this one in the yellow. Let's close and save. You're going to see it updates all of our text there. So then I can close and save again. And bam, there, everything is now updated. So that's how you can just literally just easily go in and update every one of these with either using the preset stuff that's there, or like I said, just drop your own graphic right on top of those and it's all going to get applied. All right, so super easy to use. Now I did want to show you one more time. If you wanted this to be, you know, let's say our subject, let's take our subject layer, let's turn all these shadows and stuff off. If we resize our subject, so maybe when we wanted her to be, you know, something like this, where it's more 3/4, well then we could come down to our background. We're going to turn off ground shadow, and then we're going to hold shift and disable the mask on the background containers. And there you go. There's your full length with the light fall off and everything in place there. All right, so then you just place your subject, you know, wherever you want within the frame. And now you can get that full length look or the 3/4 look. And again, text is there. If you wanted to change that text or move it around, you could do that, you know, from here very easily as well. So anyways, that should be a full look at how to easily customize this. Hopefully you'll find it's very, very easy to use, just kind of like the other media panels. Template option I have out there, very simple to use, but I think it looks really, really cool. So I hope you get a ton of use out of this, and I can't wait to see how you guys are using this, and I will see you on the next video.